know how they're hard. Say, fine ever see. The process starts with a machete. Workers move fast, cutting off all the leaves in just seconds. You might be wondering why. It's not because the leaves block sunlight, and it's not to help the plant grow. At this stage, the Brussels sprouts are already fully mature and ready to be harvested. The leaves aren't edible anyway, and removing them simply makes the harvest faster and cleaner. Next, the entire stalk is cut and loaded onto a conveyor belt, feeding into the harvester. You can think of it like a giant pencil sharpener packed with hundreds of fast-spinning blades. As the stalk passes through, each Brussels sprout is cleanly sliced off, while the bare stem is thrown out the back of the machine. And surprisingly, those stripped stems actually make pretty good swords. Finally, the Brussels sprouts go through a quick hand grating before moving on to the next step. A lot of people hate Brussels sprouts, but the problem isn't the vegetable, it's how it's cooked. Roasted or pan-fried will always beat boiling. So which side are you on? Did you know? Pineapple are a strange plant that doesn't need seeds to reproduce. All it takes is cutting off its own hairstyle. A pineapple isn't actually a fruit in the botanical sense. Inside a full pineapple, there's a central stem. As it grows upward, a full ring of small flowers blooms at the top among the leaves. Each tiny flower sits inside a small square. A large number of these squares come together to form a spherical structure. If the flowers are pollinated, they begin to produce seeds. But here's the problem. Once pollinated, the flowers divert energy into making seeds. The pineapple flesh becomes rough and hard, and the sweet pineapple we love no longer exists. So in order to eat good pineapple, humans do something a bit heartless. We prevent them from falling in love. Without pollination, the flowers can't form fruit. They dry up into small, pointy bumps instead. At the same time, the flower base no longer needs to support seeds, so all its energy goes into growing larger, storing sugar, and becoming sweet. Many flower bases fused together are what we call a pineapple. So if pineapple don't grow from seeds, how do we grow the next one? The answer is in its hairstyle. That leafy crown on top of a pineapple is called the crown shoot. If you cut it off and plant it in soil, it will grow roots and sprout, eventually becoming a brand new pineapple plant. If you try this and succeed, come back and tell me. How are cranberries actually harvested? As you can see, harvesting cranberries by hand is labor-intensive and time-consuming. So during harvest season, farmers flood the fields with water, usually about 3 feet deep. Because cranberries have hollow air pockets inside, they float easily to the surface. All that's needed is a gentle beating of the vines. The cranberries rise to the top and are then guided toward this machine. It uses a hose to suck the cranberries up and transport them to a homemade harvester. The entire process is extremely efficient. The machine itself is actually very simple. It washes the cranberries and then dumps them directly into a truck. Inside, there's a set of rotating fingers that spin in the opposite direction of the berries, pulling out dirt and weeds along the way. Honestly, they look just like a pile of Skittles. The whole scene is incredibly satisfying to watch. But this process also comes with a new challenge. Wolf spiders that live in the fields are forced to surface as well. Once farmers start handling the cranberries, thousands of wolf spiders can end up crawling onto them. If they bite, it can be extremely painful. However, these spiders help control harmful insects in the fields. In a way, they're actually the farmers' friends. Be honest, would you be willing to work alongside wolf spiders? Why can this corn get sick, be edible, and even become more valuable? For most people, the first reaction when seeing corn like this is simple. It's spoiled, throw it away. But in Mexico, it's considered a delicacy, often referred to as the black truffle of corn. On the surface, it really does look diseased. But what's actually happening is that the corn has been infected by a fungus called corn smut, which causes the kernels to swell and turn black. It looks moldy and unpleasant at first glance. But in essence, this fungus is no different from mushrooms or porcini. It's an edible fungus. In most countries, this condition is treated as a serious agricultural disease. Once it's discovered, farmers try to eliminate it immediately to prevent it from spreading. But in Mexico, the situation is completely reversed. The more infected it is, the more valuable it becomes. A single ear of smut-infected corn can sell for several times the price of normal corn. Locally, it's used to make tortillas and soups and is considered a high-end ingredient in traditional cuisine. So when the corn is close to maturity, local farmers do something that sounds completely backward. They deliberately inject the fungus into the corn, intentionally making it sick, just to harvest this black fungus that looks frightening but is actually highly prized. Be honest, would you dare to try this kind of corn? Why do farmers grow barley in water instead of soil? This is barley fodder, a green feed used for cattle and sheep. It's made by growing barley without soil. using a hydroponic system, and letting the seeds sprout into young barley grass that's fed directly to livestock. On large farms across the U.S., this method is extremely popular. The process itself is surprisingly simple. It starts with ordinary barley seeds. Before planting, the seeds are soaked, then spread evenly in hydroponic trays at a layer about 2 centimeters thick. Water is added continuously, either by hand or through an automated sprinkler system. After about 7 to 9 days, the barley grows into shoots roughly 15 to 20 centimeters tall. Would you replace hay with hydroponic barley if you were a farmer? At that point, the entire mat roots, sprouted grains, and fresh green shoots is fed directly to cows and sheep. Compared with traditional feed like alfalfa or grain, fresh barley fodder is more nutrient-dense. Farmers have found that livestock fed this green feed grow faster and produce noticeably more milk. And because it requires no soil and isn't limited by seasons, animals can be fed fresh green forage year-round, which is exactly why so many farmers rely on it.
This is one of the most underestimated technologies in agriculture, aeroponics. You might think it's just a more advanced version of hydroponics. It's not. It's redefining what it means to grow food. The roots hang suspended in the air. Nutrient solution is atomized into ultra-fine mist and sprayed directly onto the exposed roots at timed intervals. The core mechanism is simple. Give the roots water, nutrients, and maximum oxygen at the same time. The results? Fewer pests, bigger growth, faster maturity, higher yields. Up to 95% less water use. Up to 90% less space required. On a single growing tower, you can plant as many as 18 cabbages per square meter, and nothing goes to waste. In just 9 weeks, you get fully formed heads and healthy root systems. No specialized experience required. The system handles the misting automatically. Sounds almost too ideal, right? What really shocked him wasn't the yield, it was the strength. In high winds, heavy rain, even hail, a 2.5-meter tower sways back and forth, but it doesn't fall. Most other systems can only survive inside greenhouses. Maybe the future of agriculture isn't about having more land. Maybe it's about smarter roots. If growing food no longer requires soil, what does farming become? Would you put a tower on your balcony?
Why do people cut off the cassava stems before harvesting? This is in Brazil, where locals are harvesting cassava. The very first thing they do is not pulling it out of the ground, but cutting off the stems above the soil. Many people wonder, if it can be pulled out, why not use machines, or just yank it straight out? That's because cassava roots don't grow deep downward. Instead, they spread in the topsoil, forming several thick tubers that grow side by side. Cassava fields are often scattered and located on sloped land. In regions like Brazil, with red sandy soil, the drainage is good and the soil isn't very sticky. Once the cassava is mature, the whole plant can be pulled out intact. By comparison, machines are more likely to damage the tubers underground, while manual harvesting is faster and cleaner. Cutting off the stems first serves two purposes. On one hand, it reduces the plant's weight and prevents uneven force when pulling it out. On the other hand, those cut stems aren't thrown away. They're cut into sections and replanted in the soil, becoming the planting material for the next season.
Do you know how oysters are farmed? Workers first mold wet cement into small round discs, then thread them onto thick ropes to form long cement chains. Don't underestimate these dull gray blocks. They determine whether thousands of oysters will survive. These cement ropes are hung in the sea, and when the temperature and salinity are just right, baby oysters naturally attach themselves to the surface. But why use cement blocks? Because they're strong, corrosion resistant, and don't rust, allowing them to stay fixed in seawater for years. They're also perfect to cling to and grow. When the oysters reach the size of a human hand, workers haul up the entire rope during low tide, clean off debris, and move it to cleaner waters for further growth. This step has to be done fast. Once the tide rises, tons of cement ropes could be swept away by the current. The most critical part is that oysters attach only once in their lifetime. If they fall off, they can never reattach and must be rescued manually. They feed in the water, just nature's. After about 2 years, as waves polish their shiny, the flesh inside has absorbed the sea. Each rope of cement becomes a miniature ecosystem on the waves.
Did you know that simply by growing this one plant, you can save money and time? One of the fastest on Earth. You don't need to do much. Grow naturally in as little as 48 hours. its biome double. Proper management, a very small amount of starter stock can produce unlimited. What makes it aggressive goes far beyond just growing fast. It is often called a switch in proteins, vitamins, and minerals like calcium, natural feed, chickens, ducks, pigs. It's also used to absorb nitrogen and phosphorus from water, helping prevent water eutrophication. Farming allows of the water. On the other, it grows dense enough, plowing back the soil where it becomes natural nitrogen fertilizer. Studies have shown that incorporating in soil can reduce nitrogen use by 1%. Its low cost and not only reduce farming and livestock expenses, but also improve the egg products. High and can around 10 it into a high profit.
The worker is using a small it's clean by one. Looks satisfying, but he's harvesting pea crops because peas grow differently. Their energy goes into not the leaves. Leave 2 or 3 nodes at the base, and the plant going back. Triggered under normal harvested 3 to 6 times to 14 days until the stems turn. If the plant are the roots, the growth cycle. That's why farmers only cut in a few new tender should back again to grow. The first harvest can happen in just 20 to 30 days after plant. They don't face relatively low pathogen and improve even with repeated cutting. The root system continues to grow, and the proved along the harvesting isn't a low option with children.
The girl was walking around when she found the string balls, and it turns out that's actually great for the environment because these are apple snails. They were originally subject to them to be controlled. Apple snails survive in almost rice paddies, ponds, ditches, low environments. They grow fast, and a single adult snail can lay home conditions. Those eggs can hatch within just a few days, and these a few weeks reproduce them. Is their survival strategy. They lay their eggs high above the water line to avoid aquatic predator survival. There are active napulation. The result is rapid pop growth. Feed on young rice seedlings, gradually pushing. People have tried eggs, introducing treatments, but their reproduction these efforts. By the time hatch is cleared, so in some areas, people are left with only one option: remove the eggs or they hatch. Actually, the first line of the ecosystem. Their farm, whole aquatic and suffer serious damage.
Why Bangladeshi farmers destroy their own? They are digging out the clay beneath the paddies, but they can afford to keep farming. Single rice crop costs keep rising, and one flood can wipe out an entire season. Selling, however, cash in days. Years of thin profit farming. That's why, for many families, become the only asset that still works. But this changes identity. It's sent to brick factories, fired into bricks and tiles, homes. Brick you see field that's disappearing comes later. Once that clay layer is removed, the damage begins. From a distance, it still looks like a field, and the land for many years. It looks like air, but can no longer be farmed. So the land is gone to survive. And what does that mean for the future of agriculture?